I keep hearing it. It's driving me nuts. I've heard it 100 more times. It's finally draft week, and people won't stop saying it, including very respected media members and a large portion of the fan base. Quit saying it. I'll tell you what it is in the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really
The Texans have to get a quarterback. They have to get a quarterback. No specific name, but the Texans have to get a quarterback. They've got to come away with the quarterback. John McClain has said it. I've seen and heard multiple people say it, national media types, local media types, fans, etc. But my question is this: why? Why do they need a quarterback so bad? Like, everyone in the big scheme of things needs a quarterback. The Texans aren't going to look at a player and say, this is a franchise quarterback and pass on him, obviously. But why do they need a quarterback? Is it because of how bad things have been the last 2 years? Because they haven't had a franchise quarterback the last 2 years? Most seasons in Texans history, they haven't had a quarterback, haven't had a franchise quarterback. And the stadium's been full. Stadium hasn't been empty the last 2 years because they haven't had a quarterback. The stadium has been empty because there have been trust issues with management, and there have been trust issues with head coaches. Like, there's nothing that you could have believed in the last 2 years and wanted to spend time on top of the crappy product. You had David Culley, you had Lovie Smith, you had the POS Jack Easterby, and you had the inevitable meltdown of the King Bill era. People gave you the benefit of the doubt there, but people knew that wasn't going to end well. So the last 2 years that you haven't had fans, it's not because you haven't had a quarterback. Furthermore, what is a quarterback? Like, people think they're saying something smart when they say a quarterback. They need to get a quarterback. John McClain said this. I cannot wait till John McClain comes in Tuesday at 11 Central on In the Loop on Sports Radio 610, which you can hear me on 10 to 2 Monday through Friday. A quarterback? Didn't John McClain eat a damn newspaper because he said the Texans needed to take a quarterback a few years back? He ate a newspaper because the Texans didn't draft Blake Bortles or Johnny Football. And here he is, how many ever years later, and he's saying the Texans need to come away with a quarterback. And he even mentions that they don't need to reach on a guy at 2, but they need to come away with a quarterback. Oh, so don't reach on someone at 2, but it's okay to reach a little bit later? It's not ideal to not be able to get a franchise quarterback. It's not the ideal situation. But to say they just need to take a quarterback, why? The guy they liked is going to be off the board. So now what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to just shuffle around and decide between the quarterbacks that they don't like? You've already seen the reports. You've heard the reports that Nick Caserio, according to Peter King, tried to trade up for the first pick. He mentioned Ryan Poles by name. So if you're looking to do that, if you're the Texans, and I believe this because Peter King mentioned Ryan Poles' name, if you're willing to trade up to number 1, you're doing that because you like one of these quarterbacks more than the other, and you're willing to give up something to do it. So now you're just supposed to draft one that you tried to avoid drafting just so you can get a quarterback? I don't get that. I don't necessarily think that's a recipe for success. If they thought any of these guys were franchise guys, they're taking them. But if they don't believe that, why do they have to take a quarterback? Like, drafting Will Levis is not going to all of a sudden sell out season tickets. Or CJ Stroud. Now, if you draft those guys, you end up winning, cool. But if you draft those guys, what if this is another Zach Wilson situation where the Jets took Zach Wilson at 2, or Trey Lance when DeMeco Ryans the San Francisco 49ers took Trey Lance at 3? Might end up being the Texans quarterback now. You go through the list of guys that have been drafted in the top 5 the last 20 years. We've gone through this list. There's 10 quarterbacks that you think are maybe franchise guys. Only 3 of them weren't taken number 1 overall. So this notion that they just need a quarterback, I guess the newspaper tasted good to John McClain. He didn't learn his lesson. Because typically when you get punished and as a result you have to put something in your mouth, you learn a lesson. That's why your mom wipes your mouth out with soap. Maybe McClain liked the taste of the newspaper, but he's still saying it. I also think we have to factor in the experience of DeMeco Ryans when we're talking about this. And DeMeco Ryans has more experience in the decision ahead of the Texans than most coaches have in an entire lifetime. And it might be somewhat of a blessing because he might be able to go make a decision that might not satisfy the fan base, but he thinks is in the best interest of the Texans. Because DeMeco Ryans and Bobby Slowick were part of the 49ers staff that passed on a quarterback in 2017 when they had the number 2 overall pick. Maybe the organization was guilty of overanalyzing guys, and that's why they passed on the Mahomeses and the Deshaun Watsons. They were thinking ahead. They were thinking of Kirk Cousins, but maybe they overanalyzed that. Maybe DeMeco Ryans can learn from that. 2021, just mentioned that. 49ers were going to take a quarterback no matter what. They were subscribed to the John McClain, got to get a quarterback. Hell, they traded a massive haul of draft equity to get up to number 3 in the draft. And they were deciding between Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trey Lance. They were deciding. They went, we got to get a quarterback. And they drafted Trey Lance. You combine that experience, you combine those things that DeMeco Ryans has been through, and you got to wonder what he's going to do. The one thing I don't think DeMeco Ryans needs to think and Nick Caserio needs to think is we need to take a quarterback. If they like Will Levis, okay. If they like CJ Stroud, okay. If they like Anthony Richardson, okay. But take a quarterback? Nah. No, thank you. Doesn't work that way. You look at the 49ers last year. Who were the 2 best players on the San Francisco 49ers last year? Nick Bosa was 1. And then do we want to we can argue between, I would say Christian McCaffrey. That would be my vote. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, maybe a linebacker. The 49ers last year, we talk about Brock Purdy going 5-0. We talk about Mr. Irrelevant. The trade for Christian McCaffrey is what set that off. They only lost 1 game that Christian McCaffrey started. They were below 500 without him starting. So this draft a quarterback, I hope DeMeco Ryans doesn't subscribe to that because he doesn't need to feel any pressure. And Nick Caserio, if you like Bryce Young so much, you probably should have played things a little bit more smooth last year than you did. Or you probably should have executed the trade that Peter King says that you tried to execute. Although it seems like you're not very good at executing trades lately. Sorry, just a little pissed off that we're even having this discussion. Should be Bryce Young, and that's the end. Should be talking about 12 right now. We're talking about 2. And the Texans, they have the draft by the nuts. There is something I think they should do that I'll get into a little bit later. There is a trade that just makes too much dang sense for them to make. We're going to be at the draft party. If you're going, come by, say hi. We're going to be streaming afterwards. We're going to be covering this thing from top to bottom on In the Loop, Sports Radio 610 with Landry Locker, Figgy Fig, John Lopez. And it's going to be fun. But don't tell me you need a quarterback. Give me a name. Come on, McClain. Did you not learn any lesson after eating that paper? It's the Locker Room, number 1 source for Texans daily digital content. No matter what happens, whether they draft a quarterback or not, we're all in this together.
What it is, let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the